Hello. So I thought it might be helpful to share what my channeling roots are, so to speak. When I started channeling, how I started channeling, and how it's developed from there. So I identify the summer of 2015 as the starting point for all forms of channeling that I do. E- mm, I want to qualify that a little bit because I can look back to, let's say, 2010, 2011, etc., and see that I was probably doing some channeling through the card readings that I was offering, through the Reiki that I was offering, and just didn't understand that's what it was. That all changed in the summer of 2015. So it was in June of 2015 that I had a very strange, very unexpected experience while I was receiving Reiki from a friend. We had been doing weekly Reiki shares with each other. And as I was lying on the massage table, suddenly my right arm raised off of the table. And I looked at my friend and I said, "Is my arm moving?" Because I wasn't intentionally moving my arm. And it proceeded from there. That day was physical movement, exclusively physical movement. The next week we gathered, we had invited a third person to come to observe, to have a fresh pair of eyes to observe, because we were completely gobsmacked by what had happened the week before and assumed rightfully that it might happen again. So it did happen again and was a bit more involved. And when I sat up on the massage table, when my session was finished, all of a sudden, these voices started coming out of my mouth. So, and it was so interesting because they were each so very distinct. And I'm actually asking my guides if it's okay to share um, who channeled through me, because it's really vulnerable to talk about this. It's so very vulnerable, which is hilarious in a way, but that's just the way it is. So the first voice that came through was identified as Buddha. And that was pretty cool too, because before they began talking, they literally said who they were. So this just Buddha came out of my mouth in a very deep tone, very masculine way. And it wasn't just the voice, my entire being changed. Facial expression, the way I was holding my body, everything changed. And then that energy said a few words and then receded, so to speak. And then Kuan Yin, completely different voicing, completely different characteristics, because again, I'm getting goosebumps. Everything about me changed. And then the next one was Jesus. And then the next one was Mary, mother of Jesus. And again, different voicing for each one of those energies, different characteristics in terms of my body, how I was holding my body, my facial expressions. And I'm just so grateful that we had that third person to witness this. I mean, none of us could believe what was happening. I was in that very strange but very cool position of being an observer to what was happening, even though it was happening with me and through me. And so there was that. And then the thing is, I felt like that was, I want to call it a special event. It was an introduction of sorts to what was to come. One heck of an introduction, obviously. So then it was over the next several weeks. Typically when I went to bed, I would undergo massive amounts of energy work. I might go to bed at 10, but it was probably midnight or afterward before I was actually falling asleep because that resting time was a time that seemed designated to coordinate the energies needed for what I didn't know was going to happen. Um, so yeah, it was such an interesting time. I never knew what to expect night to night. I knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know what. And it was probably, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks later. There was one night when, again, a lot of energy work and things were feeling different. And I was just again paying attention, being the observer. And as I was laying on my bed, my with my head on my pillow, my head turned to the right and then came back to center. And a voice came out of my mouth saying, "We're here." Now that repeated itself probably about a dozen times. And I was just paying attention and wondering who we were. And and then it was done. The energy work was done. And as was typical of that, by the time the energy work was done, I fell asleep. There was just, it was almost like somebody turned me off or something, hit the off switch. Um, so after that, because understanding what I described, what happened in my friend's Reiki studio with her and the third person that we had come to witness what happened that day, 2 or 3 weeks before that, between those times, there was really no other indication that what had happened as far as my body being motivated by other energy, other voices coming through, none of that had happened. None of that had happened. And I was like, well, maybe that was just an anomaly. Truly, maybe it was. And then that night happened with those 12, we are here. And over the next probably week or so, I was noticing things shifting quite a bit again. And what was shifting was that as I was walking across the floor, for example, it felt as though I had another pair of legs walking with me, both sort of in me and also outside of me. And a very odd but very cool feeling. Sometimes the energy was such that I had actually found myself looking down to make sure my feet were on the floor. It was such a bizarre feeling. And there were times I would sit at the dinner table with my family and observing my hands reaching out and touching things like the tablecloth, the plate, the silverware. And and I'm observing this and like thinking they're going to think I've gone absolutely out of my mind, but nobody noticed anything, which was again the oddest thing. Like I couldn't even fathom how they couldn't notice. My friend, on the other hand, we got together at a coffee shop and similar things were happening. And also when I got together with her, my body would start rocking like this. Didn't matter where we were. And but again, even in this coffee shop, which was pretty busy, like nobody seemed to notice. It was so strange. But I was so grateful because I didn't want that sort of attention. As it was, we were trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then I was guided to start doing journaled writing. And the writing, when it came through, if you've ever done, it's, um, we call it automatic writing. At this point, I call it intentional writing because my intention is I'm not going to be doing the writing. Whatever energy that needs to come through me is going to do the writing. And so that's what was happening, but the letters were enormous. So imagine a notebook paper, and each letter would take up the height of 3 lines. It was huge. Like I filled a notebook start to finish with this enormous writing. But as time went on and I was doing this every single day, the messages that were coming through were more often than not very similar, having to do with healing Earth. Um, the messages that we were probably would want to receive in terms of our place in this universe, um, our service here on Earth. Very supportive. Everything was very supportive. And so that continued for a couple of weeks. And as time went on, the writing slowly got smaller and smaller. And so by the end of that particular frame of time of writing channeled messages, it it was down to what I would call a normal size for me. The a sentence could fit on one line rather than taking up a whole page. And and then past that, the verbalizing, the vocalizing finally began in earnest. And I actually recorded a video July 1st of 2015 when that was just getting going. And it's really interesting for me to watch myself in that video. And it's also a little embarrassing in a weird way, only because for one brief sentence to come through, it would take like a minute or two. And and I can look back now and say, well, I know why that was. That was because the energies that were speaking through me and using my body, they were learning my physicality as much as I was learning their energy. And it was exhausting. There were some days I'd go to my friend's house and things would really get pretty intense as far as what was coming through. And it would be pretty prolonged. And by the time I got home, my physical body was so tapped, even though my mind was all excited and I felt elated and um just really fulfilled, for lack of a better word. My physical body, whew, there were times I wasn't sure I was going to make it from the car to the front door. I did, I always did, but it was remarkable to experience what energy can do to a physical body. And energy specifically that's at a much higher vibration than our physical bodies. That's what all that energy work was for. It was preparing my physical body for that. And even so, wow, big learning curve, big learning curve. So fast forward to today, and the channeling that I do is full body channeling. That's how I describe it. I actually call it indwelling because the sensation that I have, it's not as though I pause and invite the energy. The energy is always there. The energies are always there, always describing themselves as a we. And on occasion, they will quote unquote separate themselves and make clear there's one particular energy that is speaking for the group, but in general, they speak as a whole. And it's a lot more seamless than it used to be. It My voice still changes, although not as much. There is a sort of accent that comes through in general. Things get more quote unquote precise. And yes, it's still me observing. The thing is really interesting because there's a difference between the channeling with the indwelling energies and channeling spirit guides, for example. So when I work with clients and I'm channeling their spirit guides, it's almost as though there's a ticker tape. Do you know what a ticker tape is? It's like this stream of words slowly coming through. And so the thing is, like, I will see a word in my head before it comes out of my mouth. I won't see the whole message coming through, but I do get a glimpse of the word that is about to come out of my mouth. When it comes to the indwelling energies, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth until I hear it. So it's an interesting distinction, a small distinction, because again, it's not like I'm getting a big preview of coming attractions when I'm channeling somebody's spirit guides. It's just that I do get that little glimpse, and that's, the one thing I noticed that's different from that vocal channeling. So anything else I want to say about that? No. Yeah, I asked that question. I didn't shake my head. My indwellers shook my head. And so, okay. And so consider this then the introduction to we, because this is the purpose for this channel. There are things that need to be said. There are questions people have. And what we intend to do, with Ellen's permission, is answer those questions, offer those messages. And so this introduction, which is a secondary introduction to what has already been posted here, lets you have a sense of how Ellen came to be working in this way. And perhaps it will let you know that this is something that truly anyone, we feel, could do if it was something that was for them. Yeah, I like that. If it's something that's for them, and for them, I mean, does everybody need to channel? Is it helpful for everybody to channel like this? Not necessarily. I mean, there's a purpose with me. It's something that I use every day, with at least 5 days a week, with my client work. But otherwise, yeah, is it something that would be good for, every single person here on earth to be doing? It would helpful, and it probably not. Probably not. So, however, maybe you are a person who is intending to be or is in service in ways similar to the work I do. And in that instance, it's something to consider, that this is something that you too could embark on. Yeah, I don't know how you choose it. I didn't choose it, it just happened, which is maybe what's for the best. But anyway, something to bear in mind. All right, anything else to say before we end this video and perhaps make another one? No. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press stop on this video and press start on another one, and we'll see what comes up. Okay? Thanks for watching.